We're on a mission from God.
And now for something completely different.
Let's get ready to rumble! Yeah, baby, yeah!
This is Pastor Jolly John Lukomski.
And this is Pastor Matt Youngblood Clark.
And Matt, go ahead and tell them where you're from. They don't care where I'm from. Sometimes I'm in Northfield. Right now I'm in New Athens, but I'm all over the place. But you, on the other hand, is a very solid, stable, reliable person. You can always be found where, Matt?
I'm staying put right here at Ascension Lutheran Church in picturesque South St. Louis.
And I, on the other hand, am just a vagabond. That's what I am in my retirement.
In your retirement, you've turned to the gypsy life. You are just traveling the Midwest.
That's right. You never know where I might show up at your doorstep. Dear listener, you better lock your doors because at any moment I might just show up. Matt, this episode will be airing on December 16th. Have you done your Christmas thing? Because I know that had to be altered for COVID, but do we need to put a word in for that, or what's going on?
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Yeah. So here at Ascension, we have a live nativity each year, which has really become pretty cool, I think. Live animals.
Because the dead nativities are just a bummer.
I know.
No one wants to go to a dead nativity, but you have the live nativity, Al.
Well, and that brings me to my next point, though, John. Because of COVID, we'll have about 1,000 people in the span of 4 hours in one evening. And we thought, well, how are we going to control that crowd? So this year it's a little different. And, that was one possibility to change the name to the Dead Nativity, but we scratched that one. And instead we're calling it the Still Nativity. All right. So,
cool.
So we will
Still Night.
Be still and Silent Night, that kind of theme. So instead of having our members dress up as costume characters, instead we have life-size silhouettes that'll be out front. And we'll still have the storyboards with the scripture readings telling the story. We'll still have that short-range radio message that'll be broadcasting Luke chapter 2. And we'll even have some special music here and there. But it's going to be a little different.
Are you still got the bagpipes coming?
We do. We still have the bagpiper coming. So the one thing, the one challenge with the bagpiper is they said it needs to be warm enough for the bagpipes to work. So we're trying to be creative. We've got a little shelter and a couple of heaters up for the bagpiper so that their bag inflates.
Who knew? I didn't know that. So you can't bagpipe in the extreme cold.
Apparently not.
Now the question is when is this going on, Matt?
So it's going to be the whole month of December, basically. So that's
cool.
The blessing in all this is. So you stop by any time. It's nightly. There's not going to be music every night, of course, but the display will be up nightly. The radio will be running nightly, and that's one of the benefits of this too. Is that message of Jesus born for us can go out a whole month rather than just one night. So stop by St. Louis Hills neighborhood where we're located. It's chock full of Christmas lights. It's the go-to place. You can stop by Ted Drew's even and get your frozen custard and buy a Christmas tree while you're over here. Stop on by.
So Matt, the last few weeks I've been sharing some of my voluminous knowledge that I've gathered in my old age. And with Christmas coming up, there's another thing I wanted to warn people about. Because, when you're wrapping presents, you got to have tape, right, Matt? You can't, unless you're really good with the origami, you got to have tape.
Got the Scotch tape.
But here's a bit of knowledge for you, a bit of wisdom. Don't get the invisible tape. I made the mistake of getting the invisible tape. I laid it down and I can't find it. Okay? So that's my advice.
Thanks for the public service announcement, John. We appreciate that.
It's so, you go, and where did I put it? I don't know. It's invisible. I can't see it. All right. What I want to do today, Matt, is I want to share with our listeners one of my favorite Christmas stories. Is that okay?
That's okay. Did we announce what the show is, though, John?
Oh, no, I don't think we did.
I don't think we did.
All right, well, maybe we should.
This is wrestling with the
with
basics.
the basics. Yeah, I'm not always sure whether we should announce it or not. Otherwise, we get the nasty emails.
That's right. They don't know who to send the emails to if they don't know what show it is.
That's right. If they don't, maybe they may think it's thy strong word or something. So if you would read, please, Luke 17, verse 11.
Okay. You said this is a Christmas story, John?
This is one of my favorite Christmas
story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Luke 17. All right. Here we go. Luke 17, verse 11. On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us.
All right. So I guess it's time for me to make a little confession, Matt.
Yeah, where's the Christmas connection?
Well, so maybe it isn't my favorite Christmas story. In fact, maybe it's the text that my Pastor Lyle Bittner, preached on for Thanksgiving. But it was one of those things where his sermon got me thinking. And you know how it is when you discover something new, when you see something you've never thought about before, you want to share it with people the first opportunity you have. And sad to say, this is the first opportunity I've had. But we'll try to I hit my mic there with my hand. I got to be less enthusiastic. We'll try to tie this into Christmas before we're done.
All
okay?
Right, good.
But there were just a couple things here I thought that were worth sharing with people, because you've done this story before, haven't you?
Sure. So this one I think is the one that comes up every Thanksgiving. It's going to be a signed text for that National Day of Thanksgiving. So yeah, typically that's our gospel reading.
It occurred to me it's probably the gospel that I preached on more than any, because it comes up every Thanksgiving, and it also comes up in the 3-year lectionary too. What I'm referring to is we got a series of gospel lessons we read, and it cycles through every 3 years. And so it's in there too. So literally every 3 years you'd have 4 chances to preach on it. And so it's striking that I never thought of this before, because I probably preached on this at least, I don't know, maybe a dozen, 15 times in my 40 years of ministry, maybe even more than that. But okay, here's the first thing that I thought was cool that Pastor Bittner pointed out. These are 10 what? What are they, Matt? They're 10 what?
Lepers. They have leprosy.
And do you know what the Old Testament law required lepers to do?
Well, they were outcasts, right? They were considered unclean. They couldn't be part of the immediate community. Yeah.
But what were the specific things they had to do to show that they were outcasts? Do you know? I don't. If you don't feel bad, because I didn't either. But it's in the book of Leviticus. If anybody wants to go look it up.
Right. Well, I know they had to yell out, right? They had to be at a distance.
That's one, and you had to yell out, "Unclean, unclean." Yeah.
It's kind of like us with COVID. Unclean.
Well, see, you got me. That's exactly. It's remarkably like COVID. So they had to shout unclean. Do you remember? There's 4 things they had to do. Unclean was one. You remember any of the others? You know any of the others?
Well, they had to separate themselves from the community, right? Weren't they physically separated?
No, we said that already, but there are 4 specific things they needed to know so people would know they should be separated. Certainly shouting unclean would be one thing. That would catch people's attention, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so what else, John?
Well, you couldn't cut your hair. So you got COVID hair. All right.
There you go.
You couldn't cut your hair. You had to wear I'll get my mouth to work. Wear torn clothes. Okay, your clothes had to be kind of ratty and torn, which is like what a lot of us are doing when we're working from home. Put on the pajama bottoms. We don't bother to get dressed up. But the one that struck me that I did not know and I thought was so appropriate, you had to wear a mask. Now, it wouldn't be a mask as much as it would have been a veil, but yeah, the law required that you would cover your face. And I thought, well, that's cool, because that's the same thing we're doing in our pandemic as well. And I wonder if people understand that the reason you wear a mask is not to keep you healthy, but it's to keep other people healthy, just like it would be with the lepers. They weren't wearing a veil in order to, so no, they weren't. They were the lepers, but they were wearing a veil so that they couldn't spread any contamination to anybody else. So thank you for pointing out. That's my first thought. this is nothing new. The things we're doing now in order to avoid the spread of the disease is what the Old Testament says we're supposed to be doing. This is personal to us, by the way, because my wife was exposed to COVID. And so she had to go into the 14-day quarantine, had to be tested and all that. So I know it's not comfortable. We don't like it, but it's pretty much standard medical practice. It's been that way since the Old Testament times. So any comments about that, Matt?
Well, I just think that's interesting. God knows what he's talking about when he gives those rules and regulations. I mean, certainly connections to ceremonial uncleanness, but just physical safety. God gives those instructions to yell out unclean, and like you said, to wear that veiled face and all those other things. It's just interesting. God cares about our physical well-being. And we see that all the way back in the book of Leviticus, and now reflected here in Luke 18.
And you have been talking about that in your wheel of health and certainly physical. Was it the wheel of health? What was it? The
wellness wheel.
Wellness wheel. That's the word. And so part of that wellness wheel is health. So I thought that was cool. So thank you, Pastor Bittner, for bringing us to that Leviticus passage that I'd never really studied in detail before. But let's continue the story, if you would. So we have these 10 lepers, and they're crying out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." But would you pick it up then at verse 14?
Yeah. When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed.
And so what's the purpose of going to show themselves to the priests, Matt?
So they would be the ones that would give them the okay to return back to the community, to check them out, to see if they really are cleansed and clean again and able to be a part of again, just the community there, and it's safe for them to return.
So they were your Quest diagnostics of the time.
Yeah, I know.
They were your CVS, your Walgreens. You'd run down there, you'd get your test, and they tell you, okay, you can go back to the community now because you came out negative. So that's what we had to do with Lynn. We went to the local CVS. You don't go into the store. Oh, no. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Unless you want to go in shouting, "Unclean." But you go to the drive up, and even the pharmacist there doesn't have anything to do with you. She passes you this stuff through the window, through one of those sliding metal drawers, and you give yourself the test. And although they observe you, they watch to make sure you're sticking it up your nose sufficiently. Oh, by the way, Matt, I'm sorry. Another thought. I just got to throw this in. So that's how have you been tested for COVID yet?
I have not been tested. No.
Okay. All right, for those of you who haven't, and I know a lot of our listeners have already, I know I had back when I had my heart attack. That's when the whole thing started. They take this little stick with something on the end, some kind of swab, and they stick it up your nose.
Okay.
And they rub it around in your nose for a while, hold it against the side of the nose for 15 seconds, probably the longest 15 seconds in your life. Then they take it out and they poke it. You know what's going to happen. They poke it up the other nostril. Okay? So but it occurred to me, because a lot of people are scared of this. A lot of people, oh, that sounds uncomfortable. They said have something stuck up their nose. But then I realized as kids, we were preparing ourselves for this when we stuck green beans up our nose. See, we thought it was just some childish thing, but honestly, we were getting ourselves ready for COVID.
For COVID. Of course.
Okay. So the next time your child sticks a green bean up his nose, remember, maybe he's just getting ready for the future. All right.
Thanks for that, John.
Well,
helping parents out there everywhere.
That's right. This has just been chock full of good information. So, all right. So we've gone to the
John. How's Lynn doing? Is she okay?
She's fine. The test came back negative.
Good.
Although I tell you what, that was a rough 5 days. We could not sleep together. We could not hug. We could not kiss. The mistletoe was wasted.
Oh, no.
For 5. But now we're hugging and kissing again.
Now you're making up for lost time.
Yeah, that's right. Well, man, we got mistletoe all over the house. All right, let's go back to the story. All right, show yourselves to the priest. And they went and they were cleansed. So their test came back negative too, just like Lynn's came back negative. Pick it up at verse 15.
Okay, then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. And he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus answered, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And he said,
no. Save the last verse.
All right.
That's the big surprise. So, we love the story, 10 lepers. And by the way, they all get healed. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, all 10.
Yeah. So it's not like Jesus said, "Oh, there's one really grateful guy out there. Look at that guy. He's such a neat guy. I'm going to heal him. The rest of you guys." No. He heals everybody. Okay? I hope people understand that when Jesus died on the cross, he just didn't die for the people that would be saved. He died for the whole world. All right? There's nobody that hasn't been forgiven by the death of Jesus Christ and his resurrection from the grave. I remember years ago going down to Sparta. They had 3 crosses up. Of course, that's what you got. You got 3 crosses. Jesus in the middle. And then on the left cross, they had saved. And on the right cross, they had unsaved. And every time I drove, and by they're gone, somebody tore them down. Good. Because every time I drove down, I thought, that's not right. Everybody got saved. The problem is there are people who believe, and there are people who reject that. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what a comfort that is to us too. that where Jesus died for all, he rose for all. I think that just emphasizes all those other verses we have that talk about how God wants all people to be saved, to come to a knowledge of the truth. And Jesus' death and resurrection is evidence of that. That's so important. And like you said, John, then we receive it by faith. By faith, we receive that salvation that's been won for us on the cross.
And please don't. We're not preaching that everyone's going to go to heaven, because I wish I could preach that. Wouldn't that be great if we could preach that?
Yeah.
But it's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible clearly indicates. Well, in fact, did you have that story a few weeks ago about the judgment, the sheep and the goats?
Oh yeah, Matthew 25. You bet.
Yeah. So we know they're, but people need to understand that when those people go to hell, that's the saddest day in eternity for God and for Jesus. That they're weeping, they're crying when he says, "Depart from me," because he doesn't want anybody to depart from him, right? And God says, "I don't want wicked people. They're people you want to die and go to hell, but I don't want anyone. I want them to repent and live." But the sad thing is, people will say, "No, I don't want that. No, take your forgiveness. I'm fine without it." That's a sad thing. C.S. Lewis, I thought, had one of the greatest insights about hell when he said that the doors of hell are locked from the inside.
Yeah.
Which is to say the people in hell are there because that's what they wanted, not what God wanted. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So that's number one. What kind of God do you think you got? We got a God of mercy. He's a God who heals. In fact, give us this day our daily bread. Remember Luther's meaning on that. He gives bread to the good and the evil.
Even the evil. Yeah.
That's what kind of God do you think you're dealing with? All right. So we've got that. We do have the one guy that comes back. What's distinctive about him, by the way?
He's a Samaritan of all things.
Yeah, so he's an outsider. He's a foreigner. You think these good Jew boys, they would have been glad that Jesus healed them. And they were glad. I'm sure they were glad. They ran back to the priest. "Oh, my God, we're cleansed." But it's just this one foreigner, this one outsider. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe because he was an outsider, it meant more to him. Maybe the other guys thought they deserved that. I mean, he's a Jewish rabbi. He should heal us. But this is a foreigner. No, he shouldn't have anything to do with me. And he cleansed me. And I think what's also interesting here is, what does he do in verse 18? What does Jesus say he does in verse 18?
Yeah, let's see. Verse 18, was no one found to return and give thanks and praise to God except this foreigner. So, I mean, Jesus acknowledges that in praising him and thanking him, he's giving praise to God himself.
Yeah, and that's what's really striking too, because in verse 16 it says this leper, this Samaritan, fell on his feet at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. And so, Jesus points out, you need to understand, he's not just giving me thanks. This isn't just like you go to your doctor and say, "Oh, thanks, doc. Thank you, dear heart doctor, for putting my heart back right." Well, I appreciate that doctor. In fact, I told him, I said, you know what? You do something that nobody else does. You save people's lives. I'm alive because of you. And he kind of smiled. I think that made him feel good to realize that he had a vocation that was of great significance. But the thing is, see, Jesus says, you got to understand, gentlemen, here's what makes the difference between this man and the other 9. He's not just thanking me. He's praising God, who I am. Right? I am. Yeah. He says that all the time. I am the door. I am the light. Yeah, that is that whole Old Testament word for God, Yahweh, the Lord. But now here comes the big twist. So at this point, and I suppose this is why we have this text on Thanksgiving, this is a story to teach us what, Matt?
Well,
we should be what?
Well, grateful, thankful.
Yeah.
The other guys, the other 9, you wonder what they did instead. What did they do instead of going back to Jesus? Something else was more important in their life, presumably, going and telling family, friends, going back to life, whatever it might be. But to give thanks and praise to God.
So I think that's why it was chosen for Thanksgiving. I mean, that's the moral lesson, that we should be grateful. We should be thankful for the things that God does for us. But that's not what Jesus says the message is. Okay, that's what caught my attention that had not caught before. Jesus points out that's not really the message. This is not a message about the morality of gratitude. Read verse 19 as he talks now to this Samaritan, this leper. Verse 19.
And Jesus said to him, "Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well."
Now the first thing you need to note that the word well for there is not the word for physical wellness. We're going to talk about the wheel of wellness again next week, but this is not the word for physical wellness. It is actually the word, you probably know this, Matt, don't you? It's the word for salvation, sozo. That's what he literally says, your faith has saved you. And again, I know it could be argued that sometimes that word is used allegorically to mean physical health. But I think if that's what Jesus was concerned about, his physical health, he would have used the therapeuo or whatever that word is, that means physical. But no, he says, but here's the key thing. What has saved him? Was it that he was so gracious? Was it that he was so thankful? Is that what saved him? Was it that he praised God? Is that what saved him? What's Jesus say?
So it's faith. Faith.
Yeah. And I'd never thought about that, Matt. So Jesus changes our direction here. He changes our attention. He says, gentlemen, this isn't about being grateful. It's about believing. It's about having faith. It's about understanding that God is a God of mercy and that he wants to heal and he wants to save. And he's done everything necessary that can happen. And sure, when you have that faith, when you understand what a loving God we have, you'll be grateful. Yeah, you'll be thankful. I'm not denying that. But that's the thing. It's the fruit of faith. See, the thankfulness is the fruit of faith, and faith is the key thing. And I never noticed you could use that on Reformation, couldn't you, man?
Oh yeah, this isn't limited to Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think it's a great point.
Well, because it is. Isn't that what we believe in the Reformation? That it's faith that has saved us. So, all right. Well, what do you think, Matt? Any things you want to add? Like I said, that did surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And this faith in Jesus' promise in particular, when he says, "Go show yourself to the priest," he goes. He has faith in Jesus' words. It kind of reminds me of that other leper in the Old Testament, Naaman, when he comes.
Oh, yes.
And remember, he's told by Elisha to go wash in the Jordan, right? And at first he doesn't, but then finally he does, and he's made well also. But I think it's a great point, John. Faith, and then the fruit of faith, of course, gratitude, thanksgiving.
Well, Matt, we have one more episode before Christmas, and I think we want to wrap up the wellness wheel. Would that be okay, Matt?
Yeah, sounds good.
And we can talk about how that has its Christmas connections. But we appreciate everybody tuning in to hear our show. We're now Wednesdays afternoons and Saturday mornings. And this has been
Wrestling with the Basics.